Lucy's director of Lightbox Leadership and is a Clore fellow, supported by Wellcome, and is going to be talking about existing experiential knowledge and using sort of cultural engagement to kind of empower people to use that knowledge to make change.
Thank you. So I want to continue your theme of the experience of those parents, their experiential knowledge being very valuable. And I want to talk a little bit more about experiential knowledge and also a few words about knowledge in the social digital space, and then sum up with a few speculations about what the future might hold. In 1884, Oxford House was opened in the East End slums of Victorian London, and wealthy university graduates would go and live there, helping the very poor with some legal advice and social services and things. And it was those graduates who then went on to become instrumental in setting up the early welfare state. And of course, someone else who had knowledge of Victorian poverty in his way was Charles Dickens, because his dad went to debtor's jail when he was 12, and Charles Dickens then worked in a shoe polish factory for a time when he was just 12. And I do wonder whether, if he hadn't had those experiences, he would have become the force and the voice for social change that he did through his writing. And on writing, and all cultural expression, art, culture, writing, well, it can do many, many things. One thing it's good at doing is recruiting our empathy and getting us to think about and feel things that the author or the artist wants us to think about. And when it's done really well, when it excels in its own form, the way that Dickens' writing did, it can also validate our own experiences and bring forth our own experiential knowledge in a way that it's almost we're recognising it for the first time. And that can then motivate and inform our decision-making and actions. So we might go and take on an injustice in our own life more boldly as a consequence, perhaps. So there's experiential knowledge, and it's very, very powerful. And there's another form of knowledge that's been on the rise in the last decade or so, and I'm going to call it pseudo-knowledge. And it's knowledge that's it's presented to us as content, often from a heavily branded stage, not this one, but and from someone sounding authoritative. And the thing about this knowledge is that we're not encouraged to engage with it actively or critically. We're just consuming it quite passively, like it's a product. And there is a saying I saw written on the back of a toilet door once, which is a bit glib, but it said, "Love is not a noun, it's a verb, it's a doing word." And I think that you could say the same for knowledge, because it really is a process. And I think that to engage with the process, we need to be willing to admit that we're wrong, or at least accept that we're not entirely right, and also engage with people who bring something else to the table, maybe some experiential knowledge of their own that we don't share. I think the thing about the social digital space is that the deep listening and the nuance and the doubt and the time that real knowledge asks of us is just not available there. And it's about likes and dislikes and competing with cat videos, and it's all very instant gratification and fast. And it's a bit like the trenches where knowledge is concerned, because bullets fly, but the line never moves. And it's not often that we do change our views based on someone with a different opinion writing something on Twitter, is it? I think the tendency is to entrench ourselves and make sure there's lots of weaponry, and that's fun, but I think that mentality is anti-thought, and I think it's anti-knowledge. And so as for the future, with all this going on, I think it's totally unpredictable, especially with all the emergent technologies that we can't even dream of what's going to be happening in the next 10 years. But I think the good way to prepare for that unpredictability is to incentivize divergent thinking and to acknowledge as well that in times of scarcity and insecurity, people do tend to go for totalizing points of view, and therefore how well resourced our society is and how those resources are distributed, it's going to have a very direct impact on what passes for knowledge. So if we start to take the universal basic income seriously and we start to prepare for the disappearance of jobs and ask ourselves, what is education now for? Because philosophy's not really taught, it's not central in school curriculums, and I think it should be, because for people to be taught how to defend themselves against being manipulated in a digitised, algorithmic, robot age, highly consumer-driven age, I think that it would be useful for us to be taught thought from logic up and have that self-defence ready. And basically, to sum up, if we can give our kids a real taste for difficult questions and an aversion for reductive answers, then I think the future of knowledge needn't be quite as scary as it looks right now. They're just some of my thoughts.
Thanks, Lucy. Right, so